Your rules, values, principles, etc. are great to acknowledge, but they aren't useful until you put them into play. I love the quote by Tony Robbins that I kicked this video off with. I heard it after years of saying a different version of it, not knowing that he'd been espousing this concept all along and in a more eloquent way than mine. My version usually came up when somebody thanked me for advice. I'd reply with some self-deprecation. Well, information is only as good as the person using it. Which I sustain is true, but the relevance is in the usage of something, rather than just the knowing of it. The entire purpose of having principles is to improve your performance in whatever action you're involved in, whether it's work, love, passions, or goal achievement. Acknowledging them, writing them down, as Ray Dalio suggests and with which I wholeheartedly agree, and then sticking to them. This is the key. There is, and should be, some trial and error if you're not sure about how a rule will play out. Again, we're not trying to create a dogma here. But for the most part, principles are generated when you've learned something profound or useful that you can put into play going forward with similar or adjacent situations. For myself, I have a rule regarding feedback. You can refer to feedback however you like, because some people are allergic to that word. I once worked with a gentleman who hated it. In his experience, somebody stating they had feedback for him was donning what he called the feedback badge, and it gave them the authority to browbeat him without fear of retort. I've never used it that way, but for him, I did instead say I had an observation I wished to share with him. My rule stems from one of my core principles: always be improving. The rule essentially states that real feedback requires trust in the person providing it, and the person providing it should have the courage to do so because refusing to is selfish. The provider should also be doing it for the benefit of the receiver, not because they need to get something off their chest. If you have information on how somebody could improve a process, their day, their life, you're being stingy by being afraid to give it to them. Let's not forget the delivery style is important, of course. It's beneficial to trust the source of the feedback, but it's not required if you have the right attitude about it. I have an example that fits this, because I absolutely did not trust the source, but before I dive into it, here's the point. The intent behind my rule is to always listen with intent to learn when someone is providing it. This doesn't mean that every piece of advice is pertinent or the right choice for you to apply it. It means gleaning what you can out of it because you can hold yourself accountable in some way for the need to receive it. Here's one way it helped me to make my rules the boss. I had applied to the same job once before. This was the second time I was declined. This was the job I'd wanted since I started with the company 4 years prior. And when I asked for feedback on the interview, I was provided the same answer as the first time. I'm too cocky. It should be known that was far from the second time I'd heard that word. I'd been hearing it for at least 3 years. After the first year, I started pursuing leadership roles and putting people in a position to tell me why I was meeting some resistance. That's relevant because by the time I heard it this particular time, I'd been working on my output, delivery style, general attitude, anything I could think of that was causing people to think I was arrogant. So by the time I heard it in this second decline for the job I wanted, I was quite deflated. I remember replying, you have to be confident in order to be cocky, and I don't feel confident anymore at all. I was wrong, of course. Being arrogant often has little to do with confidence. It's usually a reflection of low self-esteem. But I was making a point to the leader who was breaking the bad news. I had no idea what else to do to fix this poor perception of me. Thankfully, she had somebody she could shuffle the responsibility off to that would become a pivotal person in my career development. It was a brief window when the company required a manager from human resources to sit in on the interviews of a certain leadership level. And this was lucky for me, as it turns out. It was a panel of interviewers, 4 of my would-be peers, my would-be boss, and this HR manager. Panels did not intimidate me, and maybe that was part of the problem, and I felt fully prepared. Discovering I still made a bad impression came as a great shock considering how ready I felt. But I had made my rule. Get the damn feedback, listen with intent to learn, understand the deliverer is respecting you by telling you how to get better. So I made an appointment, brought my notebook, asked my question, and then shut my mouth. Bless this woman. She was organized, smart, meticulous, and articulate. I had let her know the history behind this question, my fight with cocky, and asked her to hone in on what she may have thought would contribute to the perception. She knew exactly what page of her notes to go on. I still have so much fondness for this person. She flipped right to it and gave me 2 or 3 examples of verbiage I had used to give her that impression, acknowledging that she couldn't speak for the other panel members. I only remember one example, though all of them were this relevant. When prompted to tell of a time handling a project, I used the colloquialism, grab onto it like a pit bull. So she asked me, do you feel like those who would see you in charge of others wish to think of you as an out-of-control animal? Aside from it being a little unfair to actual pit bulls, I was using it in the context of aggression, and her point landed with laser accuracy. No, Absolutely, I did not wish people to see me as an aggressive animal in a corporate environment. She changed my work life, but only because I was willing to seek feedback, listen to it, and put that information to great use. I spent the next year getting my act together. I paid attention to what I was saying, how I was saying it, while watching for reactions rather than just dropping the proverbial mic and walking away feeling like I crushed it. When I applied for the third time, I nailed that interview and got that job. Even better, that lesson propelled me into success within that job and was invaluable every step of the way. Had I simply stopped at the original source because I didn't trust her judgment, I wouldn't have gone to the HR manager and gotten a crucial life lesson that benefits me to this day. A quick note on judging the source of the feedback. It's only an excuse to avoid the hard work of changing. Getting better often requires work, usually difficult work. Telling yourself that the person offering you a better way, or at least a different lens on your current way, isn't worthy of giving you that information is just a very convenient method of dodging the need to hold yourself accountable. Here's the only question you need to ask yourself. Is it harder to listen to this person and try to absorb a useful lesson? Or is it harder to say they suck and don't know what they're talking about? Remember, getting better usually involves hardship. Feedback comes from experience. That's why it can be so useful. You have to mess up for somebody to notice and tell you how to not only avoid it in the future, but maybe even introduce you to some ideas that could take you from failure to excellence. If you're closed off to feedback because you don't trust who's giving it, or because you don't think you did anything wrong, or whatever other excuse you'd like to provide yourself so you can shut it out, you're killing your chances of getting better. The principle. Making your rules is a good start. Adhering to them takes effort and is always worth the effort. Applying good information is the true measure of intelligence. To get more information on how to dial in your own rules and identify your core principles, check out my video, Create Your Own Rules and Strengthen Your Identity. Thanks for watching the video and be sure to subscribe for more like it. Click on the notification bell to be alerted to new videos.